Okay, in the fake news business, nobody's bigger than CNN, and it just so happens that their headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia. Brandon Strzok and the Walkaway team are particularly incensed with how CNN has basically covered the reality of this election. Remember, these are former Democrats, a very diverse crowd, but they're real patriots. They have now come to be huge supporters of not just President Trump, but a Trumpism, the entire program of President Trump. They had a big rally here following the rally last Saturday in Washington, D.C., made up of these former Democrats that are now fire-breathing populists, fire-breathing economic nationalists. And now they're in Atlanta today. They're staging a protest at the headquarters of CNN even as we speak. It's just kicking off now. They were not able to get a permit, my understanding is, and so they're somehow congregated on the sidewalks outside of CNN. We're going to go to Ben Bergquam as soon as we can to get a live report. Also, our own Fog City Midge is somewhere down there, and we're going to try to, you got to keep an eye on Fog City, or she'll wander on you. So we're going to get the Fog City Midge also. I want to go back to Pennsylvania for a second, in particular this explosive report from the data scientists. One thing people should understand is that this is a crowdsourced operation. Not just these guys, but many guys. There's so many people that are walking to the fire on this. And beneath the surface, there is tremendous amount of analytical work going on about Wisconsin. There's a tremendous amount of analytical work going on about Michigan. There's this and others in Pennsylvania. There's tremendous amount of analytical work going on in Georgia. There's a tremendous amount of analytical work going on in Nevada. There's a tremendous amount of analytical work going on in, guess where? The state of Arizona. And there's analytical work going on in even New Mexico. Now, people say, well, hey, let's just get focused on one. We're absolutely of the strongest belief of that. This is a fight on many different fronts, and you saw that you've got three different avenues of this fight, and we try to deconstruct this so that you can kind of keep it all together in each of these states. And that is, you've got a recount audit situation, whether that's going on in Wisconsin right now, it's going on in Michigan right now, it's about to restart in Georgia. You've also got the legal remedies, and you've got Rudy Giuliani with their own. The campaigns on lawsuits that are going on in different, and remember, you're losing at lower levels to push it forward to get to higher levels. You've also got individual lawsuits all over the place, and one of the ones we had on Phill Kline, we can't get Phill back on today. We'll get him on Monday. Phill Kline was on yesterday from the St. Thomas More Society's Amistad Project. They filed, and I think it all got filed by last night, 6 different lawsuits in 6 states, right? And they argue very specifics, the granularity in each one of the lawsuits. So you're seeing across the board that this fight is continuing on. Resources are pouring in. People are getting very focused on what they need to show as evidence as far as the analytics go and how that ties to affidavits, etc. So the audience should understand that this is a fight. What you're seeing on the surface is one level of it, but below the surface there's an ongoing and tremendous fight. I'm going to come back to Greg and to Jack, and we'll talk this through. We got Boris Epshteyn at the bottom of the hour to walk through the entire battle map, but I want to go live now to Real America's Voices, the one, the only Ben Bergquam, who's been doing such an amazing job of reporting. He was at the rally last week. Ben, can you give us a situation report of what's happening in Atlanta today?
We are at the CNN headquarters, Steve. We've got hundreds of people down here right now. I'll kind of turn the camera here. You can see this event was being put on by Brandon Strzok, and they're going to go from this location down to the Capitol. And it's a right now it's an attack against the fake news media, against the censorship, against all of what we're dealing with in this country, pushing fake narratives, pushing the undermining of this country. When we go down to the Capitol, it's going to be to restore, to stop the steal, to restore the vote, to not confirm a vote that they believe to be fraudulent, that so many Americans believe to be fraudulent, to stop this process and to allow only the real votes, the legal votes, to be counted.
This is the walkaway movement, right? They are particularly incensed, given that they're former Democrats and former progressives that have now come to the Trump movement. What do they think particularly about how CNN has covered them?
Well, if you hear Brandon's story in particular, it's a story of being lied to. That's the problem with the fake news media. When we say fake news media, and I'm one of those people. I started doing what I am doing now because I was sick of being lied to. I saw so many stories coming out of places like CNN and MSNBC and the Huffington Post and New York Times and all of these leftist outlets. And I would go out and I would go to the places where they said these things were happening, and I would see for myself, wait, that's not what's actually happening. And so the people from the walkaway movement, so many of them, Shamika Michelle, who's speaking right now, Brandon Strzok, who just spoke, and so many others, it's basically the message is stop lying to us. We need real news outlets like Real America's Voice to tell the truth. And that's what they're looking for. They just want to be told the truth of what's happening. And in particular right now, when you see a press conference with Rudy Giuliani, and all they can talk about is sweating hair dye and not the content of his words. I mean, it's so clear the fix is in for most of the media outlets out there, and that's the bottom line. They compare the most of the walkaway, the lies that you get from the media, having made them think that they were Democrats, having made them think that they were victims, and finally waking up to the fact that they're not victims, that they're strong, that they're Americans, and that America's the greatest country in the history of the world, and Republicans aren't these evil things that the media's been saying for so long that they are.
So, Ben, you've been on the ground in Maricopa County. They're explosive out there today. They're fighting with the state legislature and what happened in Maricopa. You were at Washington last week at this really inflection point for the Trump movement. You're now down in Georgia on a day where a Republican Secretary of State certifies the vote and then goes on CNN, walks into that very building they're in right now, I think, and starts just basically pounding the Trump movement and pounding President Trump personally. What's the mood down there for what's happening in Georgia? What's happening with this recount? What's happening with the audit? What's happening with the sham recount, whatever you want to call it? What's the attitude of the citizens of Georgia, and particularly the Trump supporters, on what's going on?
Total disdain, total utter. When you see Republicans bending to the will of CNN and the mainstream media and saying, oh, because we have to meet this deadline, we're going to certify a vote that clearly anybody with a reasonable mind that thinks rationally can see all of these votes that are popping out of nowhere in this recount. Clearly, this vote should not be certified, but we have to do it, this overcommitment bias, that we have to do this because the law says we have to do this. There is just as much disdain in this crowd for so-called Republicans, and that's why they love President Trump so much. President Trump, these aren't all Republican voters out here. These are President Trump supporters. These are patriots. These are populists who love this country and are just as sick of, if not more sick of, rhino weak Republicans who have lied to them just like CNN has for so long and told them what they wanted to hear and done nothing to actually fix it. That when you see Republicans bending over and saying President Trump should give up, I'll tell you what, Trump supporters, you go to the top of their list for people that they despise.
Okay, you've got three things happening. We had Linwood on to start the show. You get three things happening, and Georgia's kind of one of the ground zeros of this. So you got three things happening. You've got the certification process by the governor, which he kind of gave some wiggle room yesterday about another audit by the Trump campaign that they can request an audit / recount. And it's all about are the ballots still there that you can tie back to the actual votes themselves, the ballots with the votes to the envelopes. You've got, and to check the signatures, you've got all the legal cases. I believe Boris Epshteyn is going to tell us, I think the Trump campaign's going to file today or tomorrow in federal court their suit to go along with Lynn Woods, who's totally separate, representing Georgia citizens, and he's going after the secret consent order that nobody knew about. And then you got the state legislatures, which now we understand there are a number of heroes and patriots down there in the Georgia Senate, in the Georgia House, are saying this is outrageous and we will never let this go forward as currently constituted. What's your sense, Ben, of all that coming together? I mean, December 14th is a date it's immovable. It's basically quasi hardwired into the Constitution through statutory, a statutory law. It can't be moved. 14 December is game day. How does all this get resolved on those multiple fronts down in Georgia?
Well, that's the thing. The timeline, obviously, we have a limited amount of time and a lot of work to do. But when you hear Sidney Powell and you hear Mayor Giuliani come out and say they have the evidence, they just need to present it. That really is what it comes down to. Do they have an opportunity to present it to the courts, to a reasonable court, not an activist judge like we see so many states across the country? And can this evidence move through the process in time to make the difference that needs to be made? Like you said, here in Georgia, they don't just need to reshuffle the deck chairs or recount the same cards. It's a matter of verifying the signatures and throwing out ballots where the signatures don't match. That's a huge part of it. And in the other states, it's throwing out ballots that fall into, whether it's Pennsylvania, ballots that weren't allowed to be observed by Republican observers, and whether it's Michigan, ballots that showed up in the dead of night, hundreds of thousands of ballots that they believe to be fraudulent. Can they get it done in time? And if not, then the Constitution kicks in and we see something that we've never seen before in this country. And I think ultimately this will, on many levels, get to the Supreme Court. And it will. I don't know if it will be decided by the Supreme Court, but I have no doubt that it will ultimately end up there.
Ben, hang up for 1 second. We'll do a package we just got from you on Brandon Strzok's speech outside the headquarters of CNN. We're going to go. Let's play that, and I'm going to go back to Ben in Atlanta.
I have a little bit of compassion for Don Lemon. Hear me out. Hear me out. I have a little bit of compassion for Don Lemon because I truly believe he doesn't understand at all what's going on. I don't even think he's invited to the meetings at CNN. Like when everyone sits down and they have their strategy planning meetings and they say, okay, how are we going to present the news today? Well, we got to figure out, how to make Trump Hitler today. We got to figure out how to make his following all white supremacists. We've got to figure out how to spin every story into this. And I don't think that they invite him. So I think that he just sits down every day in front of the teleprompter and starts scrolling and he just sees Nazis, white supremacists, Hitler, whatever. And then he starts crying. And he's just like, the white supremacy. And I feel kind of bad for him because I don't think he's smart enough to get what's going on. I don't think he gets it. Like Rachel Maddow actually is in on it. Anderson Cooper's actually in on it. I don't think Don Lemon's in on it. He's not smart enough. He's too stupid.
Wow, let's go back to Ben Bergquam. That's throwing down on brother Don Lemon. I'm not so sure. I think I'd actually disagree. I think Don Lemon's in on it because I think Don Lemon's smart enough. He's part of the hate Trump camp. Ben, we got about 30 seconds. Tell us, leave us with the atmosphere. How intense is it there?
Well, I agree with you. I think Don Lemon is in on it. I think Brandon was using some humor there. The left can't stand humor. They can't stand being called out. And so I think that was really more what he's saying. And that's really what this is all about. When you talk about tolerance, when you talk about justice, when you talk about all these foundational elements of what makes America America, it is not the left that protects those. It's the left that destroys those. And it is up to us, the American people, to stand up and restore this country. And that is what President Trump has done for the last 4 years. And that's why so many people are out here standing up on his behalf. He stood for us. Now it's time for America to stand for him.
Ben Bergquam of Real America's Voice, the field reporter, doing a great job from Maricopa County to Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to take a short commercial break. Be back with the posse in a moment.
Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Wow, a lot going on. One thing I want if the Real America's Voice guys in Denver can do this, I want to put up. Jack Maxey brings to my attention. It was in August when they had
May 30th when
May 30th.
George Floyd got killed. They had a riot out in front of CNN, and this should just show you a little bit of the difference between what happens when the children of light have a protest and the children of darkness have a riot.
Well, remember this is that these are Democrats. The folks out there right now, Brandon Strzok and these guys. We had Brandon on the show, last, I think, Friday before the rally last week, 10 days ago. And, these are all former Democrats. This walkaway movement is, and this was a significant part of the Trump vote. There's stories in Politico today of how Hispanics and Latinos identify more as working class people, as deplorables, than they do as Hispanic and Latino, which is what we've been saying. And it's in the lead story in Politico. This is how Donald Trump's going to get. This is economic nationalism. African Americans, Asian Americans, Latinos, Hispanics are going to understand their economic interest, and it goes above ethnicity, race, and religion, and others. Politico's got it laid out. That's the point of this revolution. This is what we've been preaching from day one. This is the very first day I joined the campaign in 2016. Hillary Clinton's coming off the beach, attacking me for being, white nationalist, a nativist, a Breitbart, alt-right. And I said, if this crazy woman keeps going there and we keep preaching the gospel of economic nationalism, we're going to win. And so we did. That's what it was about. And that's why Trump had this massive win on November 3rd. He's bringing together the Trumpism, the coalition, and this is why they have to kill it. They have to shut this down. Between the tech oligarchs and Wall Street and the corporatists, this is what look, it's called the reset, the global reset, right? They got a whole plan how to do this. It's not a conspiracy because they've laid it all out. They're walking through how they're going to do this. They're working through how they get the central banks involved, the policymakers involved. A lot of it's going to be tied around the Green New Deal, right? This is all about breaking the nation state. So, Jack, I want to go back to this, and we're going to try getting back on from Zurich. Number one, they're cranking away. But what you're seeing around the world and what you're seeing here in the United States are people that just smart, and this is what is so phony about CNN and MSNBC. They're all supposed to be data-based, evidence-based, and they don't want to talk about this. You don't see any of the shows. They don't want to talk about the math. They don't want to talk about the anomalies. They don't want to talk about what's happening. All they want to talk about is President Trump is bunkered in the White House. Every day here he's bunkered more, bunkered. He's on an island. His Axios got story. He's on an island. He's definitely not on an island. He's got a massive operation here that is both at the campaign and independent groups that are working on this nonstop. Now, I think the most important thing about is when you have access to the voter files and you have access to the actual detailed data, you can start to see guys like Vincent and his team can see pattern recognition pretty quickly and then hone in what the issues are. Mr. Jack Maxey.
And we want to be very clear here. These guys are in Europe looking at this stuff from afar. They did get the actual data sets for District 45 and for Washington County, but they have not had a detailed look through overall. What they're thinking is, what we're trying to say with this is this bears looking into. If we have several hundred dead in just one district in Pennsylvania, what does that mean about the voter rolls? What does that mean about many other things? And what we're saying, when you have somebody like this, an intelligent, thoughtful guy, we had Matt Brainerd on yesterday, he said these anomalies require that we take a harder look at everything. I can tell you, so we've had some people looking at the data sets overnight. We just got a hold of Vincent yesterday evening. I just got to speak to him. But so far, all of his data seems to be matching up. And this
we've had another team to verify this. So it all lines up. It's got to be even more verified as we go through. These are first and second cuts of things. But we know already it's been used in not at the federal level, but at the state level to verify and to check. And so this is, and look, his thesis, if it can be backed up with the voter files and the voter rolls, which it looks like it may be able to, you could actually start to see how the finesse worked.
And we're going to make his data available, particularly the stuff from 45 and Washington County, so that the whole world can take a look at this stuff. You will have it very shortly. It's actually on my Twitter feed at JackMaxey1. with links to download it. But people, this is guys in Europe, and it wasn't just Vincent. This is what I love about our movement. This was guys in Holland, Germany, Ireland, UK, all guys who were smart guys who were watching the election together, with distance, and who woke up the next day and all looked at each other and said, no way. And they started picking at the threads. And guess what? It looks like they have found a thread that could unravel this whole program. But like we've said, people, human agency, individuals stepping up to the plate are what win the baseball game.
I want to go to Greg Manns on an update in particularly in Pennsylvania. What this thing was actually a very big deal with the legislature there. Because remember, let's just go back and do a slight reset here. Keep in mind there are three avenues of attack of all this, and they're all be coming to a head. You've got these audits and kind of recounts. I don't want to say recounts because you're just recounting bad illegal ballots, right? It doesn't help you. Remember, what they're saying is all votes count. What we're saying is all legal votes count. There's a big gulf between that. What we're saying is that they have to have a chain of custody, they have to have a chain of title, they have to be verifiable, and if they are, they must be counted. You can't take out any votes that are legal and verifiable. What they're saying is totally different. If it comes in and it's a vote, it counts. Between that gap is where that's the thing itself. That's what's going to, and you've got three different avenues. You've got the audits, recounts, etc., which tie in the mathematics. You've got the legal part of this, which is arguing in federal court what's not going up through the executive branch of these states, right? You got the courts, and then you've got the legislatures, right? So you have all three areas of government: the courts, the executive branch, and the legislatures. They're all being fought, and I think you're seeing now. What you're seeing is that the certification processes are being questioned because of what exactly you're counting. And Governor Kemp, who's been incredibly weak, somebody rattled his cage. He definitely got to say, and Lynn Wood's correct. He gave a lot of wiggle room there about what's going to entail in an audit and what's going to entail in another recount. So this thing in Pennsylvania was huge yesterday. What exactly did the legislature come up and do?
So at the press conference with the state government committee chairman, Seth Grove, he expressed extreme dismay at Dominion Systems specifically and how they were set for a hearing and at the last second pulled out. They lawyered up and said, we're not coming in front of the taxpayers, the taxpayer-funded representatives for an explanation about what happened in Pennsylvania. And what the state legislature right now is looking for is transparency for all the parties involved in the election in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So having them out there giving this press conference on behalf of the taxpayers, everybody that was part of this electoral process, and calling out Dominion specifically for not being transparent with the taxpayers is something that the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania has done effectively. So what I would like to see now is the state Senate to try and take up that mantle as well.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. And so, does the legislature, you think, in Pennsylvania have the courage of their convictions, given if it can be proven? And here's the problem in Pennsylvania, and this is going to get back to what happened on that night and the days afterwards. And look, there's be blame enough to go around finger pointing after this is all sorted. What in the military called the hot wash up after an action. Right now, we can't get to that, but how those ballots got commingled. To cause what I think is going to be the central issue of this is saying, hey, yeah, it was a problem, but the ballots are mingled. Do you believe a Republican-controlled legislature in Harrisburg has the cojones to step up and say either we'll put up our own slate as a competing slate, or we just won't have any certification at all for this?
On the appointment of electors, I'm not overly optimistic that they will put up their own slate, based off of what Senate leadership and Senate House have said in the past. However, I do think they're going to continue the public transparency effort and getting forward. And specifically in their statement, the House leaders did say that they do not want to see the governor appoint electors or have this certified until the audit is complete. So both sides of that, the certification and the appointment, is coming out of the House. mechanically, I don't see them putting up their own electors going forward.
Okay, we're going to go to commercial break. How big an impact with President Trump? And right now he's meeting guys in the Oval, right? Met the people from Michigan. I think he's talked to some, obviously a lot of other people. How big an impact, Mr. Greg Manns, who knows politics in Pennsylvania as well as anybody, would President Trump having a Trump rally in Harrisburg?
Oh, it would be huge. It would be absolutely huge. We talk about the Butler rally. This would be the Butler rally on steroids if it was in Harrisburg.
Okay, stand by. Get ready to get your ticket. Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We return. Boris Epshteyn from the campaign is going to walk through the whole battle map of where we stand into this weekend. We're also going to hopefully we'll try to get Phill Kline from the Amistad Project to talk about this massive lawsuit that they've just filed in 6 states. The battle continues, and you're at Bomber Command right here in Washington, D.C., in the War Room. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Fish Burr, and the entire team from the War Room. We'll take a short commercial break. We'll return with the campaign's lawyer, Boris Epshteyn, next.
And you are over. 'Cause we take on the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're trying to get to the serious legal side of this. We had Lynn Wood to start the show. We're now going to go to Boris Epshteyn, and then we've got Phill Kline about this massive lawsuit that Amistad has put forward in across 6 states. I want to go to Boris Epshteyn in the campaign. Boris, for the weekend, can you just walk through the battle map as you guys see it in the states we're playing in and where we're competitive on this and where you don't think we're competitive?
Absolutely. I think we're competitive all over the map. Let's start in Georgia. The campaign, the president are going to continue to press that Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, and Georgia legislature insist on a true and meaningful recanvass and matching signatures of the Georgia vote. I mean, again, as we've talked about, Steve, as you know and your listeners know, they've been finding votes anywhere and everywhere in Georgia. And they're mostly pro-Trump votes. So what we want, what we insist on is an honest and true recount in the state of Georgia, including signature matching. And we will be taking all our appropriate actions, using all of our legal options to ensure that happens. So that's the state of Georgia. The state of Pennsylvania.
Hang on, hold on. Before we leave Georgia, are you guys filing? I haven't seen it. Are you guys going to file in federal court from the campaign? Not Lynn Wood. He's a side deal, but not a side deal, but he's going representing voters from Georgia as a Georgian. Are you filing a federal lawsuit representing the campaign?
Well, as I always say, right, I don't want to get ahead of the president because in the end, it's his decision and his campaign. What I will say is we are going to. I'm confident that we will exhaust every legal option, to ensure that there's a true and honest vote in the state of Georgia, and that there's no lost votes somewhere that are uncounted. That there's no Dominion issues which are switching votes, which change the outcome. We are going to get to the bottom of what the actual legal number of votes cast for President Trump and Vice President Joe Biden was in this election. I think I'm being pretty clear on that, right?
Perfect. Yes, very clear. We get it.
Okay, sounds good. So that's Georgia. Absolutely, we're going to press our case. We're going to move forward, and we will determine what the actual honest result of the vote in Georgia was. Pennsylvania, a lot of motion practice going on. The key issue is we have that Second Amendment complaint out, and we are alleging a slew of fraud and a slew of violations of due process and equal protections against the president, his campaign, and Republican voters. No observers being allowed to watch and inspect the counting of almost 700,000 mail-in ballots in just Philadelphia and Allegheny counties, which is where Pittsburgh is. Huge issues in Florida. Again, we are going to leave no stone unturned. Sorry, huge issues in Pennsylvania. We're going to leave no stone unturned in the state of Pennsylvania. I did a little of blowback to 2000. No, in the state of Pennsylvania, We will again ensure that just the legal votes are counted, and then we're confident that when that's done, what you're going to see as a result is a win for President Trump in the state of Pennsylvania. Michigan, there's just an announcement right now that the RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel and other officials are calling on Michigan, on the State Board of Canvassers, to not certify and to delay by 2 weeks to look into exactly what happened in Wayne County. So you've got the GOP chairwoman, the chair of the Michigan GOP are calling on the State Board of Canvassers to delay certification for 14 days. 14 days, and to do a full audit of Wayne County's results. In Wayne County, which is where Detroit is, 71% of voter rolls didn't match the ballots. That means that there was an imbalance between how many people voted and how many people were supposed to vote in Detroit. And we know how the Democrats do this. We know that they hold back votes and they dump batches of votes. We know they've been doing this for decades. And I'll keep going with the rest of the state, Steve, but something that's very important for your listeners to think about. If you go up to any rational American who knows even a shred of American history in this country, and you say, do Democrats cheat in elections in the big cities? I will bet you'll get 95% of people say, of course they do. What we're doing now is we're holding them to account, and we're not on these issues, and we're not letting it go. That's Michigan. Wisconsin, the recount is ongoing in Milwaukee County and Dane County. Wisconsin is a state where the president is only down about 20,000 votes. Our information tells us that these recounts are going to uncover that in Wisconsin, where mail-in voting and absentee voting are not a right, they're a privilege, over 100,000, maybe up to 300,000 people voted unlawfully by mail or absentee. They were not lawfully given the right to do so. That's Wisconsin. Go down to Nevada, we've got the election contest and the lawsuit there. A huge array of irregularities in Nevada, dead people voting, people on the rolls who shouldn't have been, people out of state who voted in Nevada, and Nevada is very close. And then Arizona. The more I'm learning about Arizona, about the lack of observers being allowed to watch, the green button issue, which I've discussed with you, the duplicate ballots, which means the fixed ballots for President Trump not being counted, the more I believe that the state of Arizona is very likely to end up going for President Trump, which I've been confident in from the day I landed in Arizona 2 days after this election over 2 weeks ago. And then we're looking at New Mexico. New Mexico, the difference is 99,000 votes. From information we have, up to 200,000 votes, mail-in ballots were counted unlawfully in the state of New Mexico. So that's the state of play all over the country. We're looking at each and every one of these. And again, if you look at the map, it's very straightforward.
Boris, just we're here to go.
All these irregularities, once all this voter fraud is uncovered,
we've got
President Trump will be determined to have won re-election.
Okay, real quickly, we got Phill Kline's going to come on here in just a few moments, but just one question people have. All this, you're hitting this in each state and going after a fraud, going after the mail-in ballots, all that. The Dominion voting system seems to be another avenue that Sidney Powell's pursuing. What can you say from the campaign's perspective of what you guys believe about this Dominion voting system's mess?
Well, we're working hand in hand, right? That's the two paths, and they're parallel and connected. Uncovering all the voter fraud, all the voter irregularities. Frankly, you could almost call it more traditional voter fraud because Democrats have been doing it for decades. Look at 1960 in Chicago and in Texas, which is how JFK won the presidency. Look at Philadelphia, look at Chicago, look at Detroit, look at Atlanta. So that's the more called traditional voter fraud. In terms of this Dominion systems, the fact that we used a system with foreign background and apparently some foreign control in 30 states in this country to count our sacred votes is absolutely ludicrous. We have to look into why that happened, and we absolutely have to get to the bottom of what happened. Here's what we know. In Michigan, in Antrim County, 6,000 votes were switched. In one county, there's 47 counties in Michigan. 6,000 votes were switched from President Trump to Vice President Joe Biden, and then we were told, the American people were told, that it was a quote-unquote a glitch. Well, you know what? The American people are smart enough to not believe that. So we're running that to ground. I know Phill Kline and his team are working on that as well, the Thomas More Society, and others are also. It is vital to find out what happened with Dominion systems, why it was used, one, and how it was used, two.
Boris, how's your Twitter and your Parler handle? How do people keep up with you during the day?
Thanks, Stephen. By the way, you guys are all rock stars, and congratulations on all your success. At Boris EP is my Twitter account. It's been exploding, and frankly, it's got nothing to do with me. Our people are so interested in true and honest information they're not getting, and I'm honored that they can get it from me. At Boris EP on Twitter, and the one and only at Boris on Parler.
Boris Epshteyn from the campaign, one of the lawyers and the communications head. Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Takes a lot when he's got this busy
So much
schedule.
talking.
I want to
Thanks,
go
God
to
bless.
I want to go to Phill Kline now of the Thomas More Society's Amistad Project. They've now initiated a massive lawsuit across multiple states. Phill, just set the battle map of what Amistad. You were on yesterday. You went state by state, talk about the problems. Walk through the battle map of where you're filing these suits and what direction they're taking.
Yeah, we'll file these suits in all 6 swing states that are currently in play. We're not involved in New Mexico right now. And what we see, Steve, is a common plan and a common scheme to hijack this election that is implemented and funded through Mark Zuckerberg and funneling money through a charity, as well as other private organizations that had extraordinary access given to them by blue state governors and secretaries of state in contracts that they will not release, that allow third parties direct access to the poll books, and third parties also direct access to fixing the poll books after the election. Moreover, they did all of this under COVID fear. That was their cover. We have to do this because COVID. We have to drop these drop boxes. We have to consolidate these urban areas, which I love, how much sense it makes. Because of COVID, we're going to break up these small counting rooms where there is a Republican and a Democrat at the same table, making sure the count goes fair. And we're going to consolidate them into these giant facilities so we can put the one Republican back in the cheap seats, and we can have unlimited discretionary authority to actually cast ballots. It's called curing. They cast ballots for people who aren't there. So we're going to consolidate this because of COVID. We're going to create a crowd, and then we're going to have these hundreds of thousands of illegal ballots run into these centers at night in the early morning hours to make up the count. That's what we believe happened. The evidence is moving that direction. And there needs to be an understanding, and you know this, Steve, by the mainstream media of what evidence is. If there's a law that says I get to audit your books and we get to look at it together, and you refuse to provide the books, and then you go into your home, board up the windows, and there's smoke coming from the chimney, I'll tell you what, that's evidence of fraud. And that's what we've got in America right now.
Phill, we just got about 2 minutes in this segment. We would appreciate if you stay here for the next. But here's the one. I just want to pull the camera back for a second. You have 3 of the most prominent, and I'm going to leave Rudy aside for a second. He's on the campaign. You have 3 of the most prominent conservative lawyers in America: Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, Phill Kline. You're each going down a different vertical and pursuing this. But you're suing in 6 states. Is there a commonality? Is what you just laid out basically the gist of the suit in the 6 states, and you're uniting those together? Because people are going to sit there, and particularly the mainstream media is going to go, Phill Kline, who's had a great service, a public service, is controversial but a great lawyer. He's now officially put the tinfoil hat on. So how do you, as they say, Lynn Woods put the tinfoil hat on, and Sidney Powell, these guys were all great at one time, but they got Trump derangement syndrome on the positive side. In a minute, do it, and then we'll come back. But how do people sit there when this thing is so massive that you're going after? How are you going to pass the credibility test with the mainstream media?
It's real simple. What I'm telling you cannot be denied. Follow the money. Follow the money. $400 million by Mark Zuckerberg matched the federal appropriation to run these elections. It all went to these urban core centers. It dictated the methods of running the election in those centers. And then follow the methods. All of these groups where Zuckerberg money was played, where he purchased the machines, where he's paying the election officials who are inside the room, went to these consolidated counting. They created new methods of interjecting ballots that could be fraudulent into the system. And then they didn't keep the logs or the evidence to show that the fraud had not occurred. You might remember, Steve, They promised 24/7 videos on the drop boxes. They promised they'd have logs for the keys and who had access, that they'd keep that data so we knew that some truck driver.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Phil, just hang on for 1 second. We're going to do a short commercial break. We got to finish this when we return. Phill Kline of the Amistad Project from the Thomas More Society. We're going to return. War Room in a second.
Started, everything's begun, and you are over. 'Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Our guest is Phill Kline from the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society. Is about to file a massive lawsuit. Phil, what's actually the timing of you guys filing?
We'll be filing through the weekend, Steve. We are in active investigation and actively involved with experts who are telling us, based on what we've uncovered, that there are hundreds of thousands of ballots in play that are questionable. And so they are putting together their reports that will be included in our filings. And we're also bringing in the investigation detail, affidavits, and so forth. So it takes time, and we are completing that through the weekend.
About that time, Phil, 14th of December is an immovable feast. That is when the electors have to show up in the state capitals for the Electoral College, right, with the ceremonial opening taking place on January 6th at the House in Washington, D.C., just yards from here where we speak right now. Is there time? To walk the audience through, do you have the time? Your critical path, because you've got recounts going on, you got re-audits going on, you got the Giuliani suits, you got Lynn Wood, you got all these guys. Is there time? Do you guys have time to collate the evidence, get into court, and start making your arguments?
Well, you've identified some significant barriers. I mean, these laws aren't set up to get at the truth of the type of fraud that we've seen here. But yes, I believe we do. I think the Supreme Court is interested in the fact that these state officials did not follow state law in administering the election. I think they're interested in the fact that they treated Republican areas differently than Democrat areas. I think the Supreme Court will be interested in the infusion of private money in the elections that created a two-tier election system, one for Democrat strongholds and other areas that would have voted for Trump. I think that violation of equal protection, the Bush v. Gore argument that we would have with that, will get up to the Supreme Court. It's just whether it's going to get there in the right form with the compelling evidence. And that is a challenge in this time frame.
Look, you're a former Attorney General of the great state of Kansas. I mean, you come with a tremendous bona fides. The question, one of the things that jumps off the page of what you're talking about is where were the state legislatures that the founders set up to be really only they can make the rules? If I believe if you have the receipts, as we call it, to back this up in court, it jumps off the page. Where was everybody when this was going? When Perkins Coie was hardwiring this with Zuckerberg and these guys, where were the state legislatures at the time that this happened?
Cowering under the fear of COVID. Cowering under the fear of COVID. I mean, what did they say about COVID that allows us to believe that a governor can be the law based on what they decide in the morning, rather than allowing the elective or the legislative process and democratic process to work? Look how frightened our nation is, such that we believe that we need one person to be the law and protect us from ourselves. Fear is what is creating this.
Phil, and this is why you're so courageous. Remember, courage is the most important of all the virtues, because it's upon courage that all the others rest. How do people get access to your work? What's the Twitter feed? If people want to support, how do they get to the Amistad Project? How do they find out more about Thomas More? Because this is going to be explosive in the next couple of days.
Thank you. I think I need to get to the 21st century. I don't have a Twitter account. I'll create one and we'll get it out. But go to www.got-freedom.com. got-freedom.com.
Phill, St. Thomas More, who's a hero of mine, would be very proud of Phill Kline and the team at the Amistad Project. I will tell you that. That I know for certain.
Thank you, Steve.
Phill Kline from Amistad, about to put out a 6-state explosive lawsuit. This is coming from many angles. But here's what it all comes back to. There's one central reality, and Tariq was the guy that said it. There was the finesse. He called it on the very first day. I'm telling you, he's like an Old Testament prophet on this. We're going to go back to this guy. You look at his Twitter feed. He called it all out, and he's coming from many different angles. Okay, many different angles. I think of all the shows we've done starting a year ago with impeachment, I think that this is the most important show we've ever done, right? Because we laid out in Georgia, Lynn Woods. We had Epshteyn, Boris from the campaign, talk about the battle map. We had one of our data scientists, one of the teams that we're working with in Pennsylvania, from Switzerland, that are patriots. They're just getting into the numbers and saying numbers don't lie, right? There's something amiss here. We've had some of the smartest guys I've ever met in hedge funds and others, and the opposition should know this. I have not met one Democrat. I have not met one Democrat. I have not met one person that voted for Joe Biden that think it's not the finesse. Every guy I know that knows how to count, okay, and I know a lot of them, not one of them don't think this is stolen. Now, some of those guys are fine with it, right? It just is what it is. This is not about a search for truth. This is about the will to power, right? And they're fine with it. But intellectually and mathematically, they know this was stolen. And that is why it's so important for this audience to just get your resolve. We're not going to budge an inch. Joe Biden and everything about him is illegitimate and illegal. And now we're going to have the American court system at the state level and the federal level. We're going to have this whole executive with the re-audits and the recounting, right? And we're going to have the state legislatures. I'm telling you, I never get this wrong. The profiles in courage, starting around the 6th, 7th, 8th of December, all the way up to the evening of the 13th, you're going to see profiles in courage at these state legislatures, because this is coming down. This is going to end with a bang, not a whimper. Okay, Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. Jack, you got anything to wrap up? I know you've been working nonstop. We've had the first rule of the war room is no fighting in the war room. There's been a little intensity the last couple of days.
Well, we've just got so much hot news breaking all the time. What I want to say is I want to thank Vincent for coming forward. I want to thank his team of other European deplorable computer jockeys who came forward. We put them together with the right people. On my Twitter feed, you can see his data sets for Pennsylvania, Washington County, Pennsylvania District 45, and the comparison between Michigan and Pennsylvania voter rolls. Everybody should check it out. Let's crowdsource this victory, guys.
Okay. We'll be back. We're 24/7, Jack's Twitter feed and others. We'll be updating you with constant information. Stay with Real America's Voice. They're going to have the team down there in Atlanta. We'll be back at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, but a lot to go through over the weekend. We'll be pushing out information nonstop. For everybody here at the War Room, thank you so much for tuning in, and particularly for spreading out the word of the War Room.